Okay, today we're going to do the skull series. There's multiple ways to do skulls. You can do them at the wall, you can do them on the table, you can do a 5 projection skull series, you can do a 3 projection skull series. So I'm going to show you all 5. I'm going to show you on the table, and then we'll talk about doing them at the wall. Many times a patient that comes in for a skull series has had a trauma, and so they're going to come in on a stretcher. So you should know how to do them on the table. A lot of techs prefer them at the wall. However, I think I can prove to you it's much easier if you do it on the table for your convenience and patient safety. So I'm going to, first of all, do the AP. The AP is a 10 by 12 IR. I'm going to put a marker on it now, which is an R marker for her right side. And she would have all jewelry and dentures removed. Anything metal, hair clips, bobby pins, anything. Can you slide your feet up onto the table for me, honey? Thank you. There. So I'm just going to float her a little bit here. So as you can see, she has a little nose decoration here. That would also have to come out. So some patients don't want you to do that, but that little nose item there will be right in the middle of her skull. So it's important that all metal comes out. I like to do the skull work on the table because the patient's more safe that way. They are also easier to check on. You can get right down and look at their head to make sure that they're nice and straight. And by straight, I mean they're not rotated this way and they're not rotated this way. I look right across here to look for the flat of the front of the forehead, right across here. I try not to use the nose too much because so many people have crooked noses that it's kind of a bad thing to look at, but I do check it and I want the patient to be nice and straight on the table. So once I've done that, I ask her not to move. I look at my IR and I want that 2 inches above her skull. Then I'm just going to turn my light on and center the light to the IR. That's nice if you remind them that they can shut their eyes. I didn't do that. And then I'm going to bring her to center. And for this projection, you need a straight edge when you're starting out. You want to visualize, come around this side please. You want to visualize the orbital meatal line. The orbital meatal line, keep your eyes closed, goes from the outside of the orbit, or outside of the canthus here, the outer canthus, down to the EAM. So in order to get that straight, hers is pretty close. I'm going to have her tuck her chin just a little bit, and that looks really good. Then I'm going to recheck to make sure she's nice and straight still. And that would be a really good picture of her AP skull. Okay, so we're going to do the PA skull now. Our patient is on the table. We want to make sure she's nice and straight. Move over just a hair. There you go. Once again, we're going to have her touch her forehead to the table. And I'm going to use the EAM and the outer orbit, orbital meatal line. Bring your chin up just a little. There you go, right about there. Now, let me pull her hair back a little so you can see. And bring this arm down just a little. So, EAM, chin out a little bit. There, right about there. So that should be a straight line. Now I'm going to move in front and just check how she is positioned here. Keep both arms equal. And then position this way, make sure she's nice and straight. And then watch that table off again. And again, your cassette should be 2 inches above. Get that where I need it. So let's put this here. So the IR is 2 inches above the top of vertex, and then the light is centered to the center of the IR. I would change my marker and put a left here because now her left arm is closest. Thank you. Column 8, 10 by 12. Make sure she's nice and centered and That's the PA. This would not be in her hair, which makes it a little difficult because then her hair would be hanging loose. You wouldn't have anything to hold it back, but this has metal on it plus elastic, and that would show, and it'd be right in the middle of her skull x-ray, so you have to get rid of that. This projection is the town or the parietal acanthial projection. You have 30-degree angle on the tube. Your IR should be at the level or an inch below the vertex. And then you just simply center your light to the IR. And we have 40 inches. So let me just double check my distance. That's 41. And so I have a little bit too much distance. It's 41 to the table. It should be 40 to the bucky tray. So what I'm going to do is go down a little bit and forward, down a little bit and forward, and recenter at the light at the centering point, and that should be better for my distance. So let's see what we have here. Yes. So now I have 40 inches to the IR. So I'm looking at my collimation. I have a marker on my IR. Of course, you can put your marker up here on the table for full digital. Then I like to come down here to the end and take a look at my patient, make sure the patient's nice and straight, make sure their head isn't rotated, make sure their neck isn't twisted, and then we need to tuck your chin just a little bit. Now, the OML, the orbital meatal line, should be perpendicular to the table. It's exactly the same position as you did for your AP or your PA. This one happens to be exactly like your AP. Same exact line that you're using, and which is the orbital meatal line is from the outer canthus to the EAM. That should be perpendicular to the tabletop. So once you have that down for the first exam, it's the same for all PAs or APs or town. You always use the orbital meatal line. So let's look at our EAM is here, her orbit's there. Let's tuck your chin just a little bit more. And there's the line. Okay? So we're looking here, down to the EAM. And then we collimate, put our marker on, shield our patient, of course, and that's the town projection. Okay, now this projection for the skull series, again, I'm doing an oblique, and I have the patient rolled up into an REO projection, and she is relaxed here against the sponge a little bit. We don't always use a sponge, but I put it there just for your benefit today. Shoulder is where you control the neck of the patient. Watch her chin. Let me get the sponge down just a little. If you watch her chin, I'll just move naturally. As I move her shoulder, see how her chin moves up, moves down? So if you are working with your patient and their chin keeps is down to the table too much, then you're definitely going to need to raise that shoulder up for you, and then that way you'll get a better picture. You're using the interpupillary line through the eyes. That's the line right through there. That has to be perpendicular. If the head is rotated, then it's going to look something like this instead, or like this. And so the eyes have to be equal. And I like to look straight at their patient's eyes to see if they're lined up and perpendicular. So if they aren't, the patient you've tried to rotate their shoulder up a little bit, and that doesn't work. I like to use a little sponge, cover the dirty old sponge, and kind of brace that chin up and then drop their head back down, and that will bring the chin up higher, if you need to. With my patient, she doesn't need that quite so far, so I might just put it right here, and or not use it at all for her because she really doesn't need it. I just wanted to show that to you. For this projection, we've got a 10 by 12 crosswise, not lengthwise. The others were lengthwise. So we're crosswise. We have a right marker. We're using the mid-coronal plane of her skull. We want to make sure that that's lined up. And then we're going to use the interpupillary line. So I'm going to step in front here, top of the table again. And I'm going to look at her interpupillary line, which is right here, making sure that that's nice and parallel, or excuse me, perpendicular to the tabletop. And make sure that the coronal plane, mid-coronal plane is lined up. She has a small head, so I'm going to go ahead and collimate just a little bit. The 10 by 12 crosswise should have a marker here in the front of the face where it's not going to be in the way of the actual skull. The mandible is actually not part of this exam, so if you clip the chin a little bit, which happens a lot on the skull series, that's okay. It is a separate exam, so markers should go toward the bottom and toward the front, the anterior side of your patient. Jewelry would be missing, and like I said, if you need to adjust your patient's head, their chin tucks down too far, raise the shoulder up, and that will be helpful for you to manipulate your patient a little bit more. We do the other lateral as well for most full series. However, most places only do 3 projections. That would be the AP, the town, and 1 lateral. So that's the general series for skulls. Now, let me talk a minute, you can relax. Let me talk a minute about doing these on the table versus at the wall. So if we do this at the wall, we would have our patient standing. That may be a safety issue if your patient is unstable or has had an injury. If you center your tube, excuse me, and you're at 40 inches, do you want to step over by the wall for a sec, just showing everyone what happens. So now I'm at 40 inches at the wall, and of course it's 40 inches for the entire exam, whether at the table or at the wall. What happens is, and I don't want to turn this light on to be in her face, but we would do this AP, 2 inches above, center the light to the IR, but as you need to touch the patient and move them or coach them through standing, you'll notice I have to get right in front of her to help her position. So with that said, most people don't want to get that close to someone else. It makes the patient uncomfortable, might make you uncomfortable. So aside from that, they may be tipsy or fall or wave a little bit or move, and so you could sit them on a stool without wheels at the wall. But if they've had a head injury, they really should be done on the table. So consider that when you're working with skull patients. It's better to be safe than sorry. So that's a skull.